Hello everyone! So far we have installed our Android Studio IDE and purchased a game from Code Canyon. It's time to see how we can import the game's source code in Android Studio so we can start the reskinning process. Here I'm logged into my Code Canyon account and we'll start by downloading the source code for the game. While this is downloading, let's take a look at the game's features. So the game includes AdMob. This is an advertising network that will allow you to display ads in your game. This is how the game is monetized. Next we can see that there are 22 different sprites included in the game. All these come in editable formats such as Adobe Illustrator or Photoshop files. This way you can easily modify the graphics of the game. The game also supports infinite playing time, so you will be able to play until you lose. The game will never end otherwise. It also includes the feature to pause the game while playing. The source code also includes a video tutorial describing the basic steps of how to modify the game in order to be able to publish it on the Play Store. Another feature is that the game saves the top 10 high scores on the user's device. It uses the phone's accelerometer in order to move the player car. It has a calibration function, it contains music and sounds, and so on. Next we can see that version 2 of the game is using the new Google Play services in order to display the ads. The file has been downloaded, so let's see what it contains. For that I'm going to extract the content of the archive into my Documents folder. Let's open this folder and see its content. First, there is a folder called Code Import Me in Eclipse. This contains the actual code for our game, and another folder called Google Play Services Lib, containing the library needed in our game. Google Play Services library will be used to display the ads in our game. We will later use this library for other purposes also. Then there is a design folder which contains some PSD files. If we open these files in Photoshop, we can see that these are actually screenshots from the game. Next, there is the documentation folder. This includes the documentation on how to modify the source code, so you will be able to publish it on the Google Play Store. The documentation comes in HTML format. Let's open the file and see its content. The documentation is organized in several sections describing how to customize the app, how to personalize it, what are the images and sounds that you will have to replace, and so on. Getting back to the source code, there is an editable graphics folder. This contains 19 images files in editable format like Photoshop or Adobe Illustrator. These files contain images of actual cars and other game assets like stones and trees. Then there's the graphics folder. This contains all the images that we might want to replace during the reskinning process. Next, there's the Libraries Used folder containing the Google Play Services library, which is already included in the project. And finally, there's a quick start tutorial video which describes how the game is structured and what you need to change in order to be able to upload it on the Play Store. Let's get back to the documentation, and on step 1 of the customization process states that we need to make sure that we have installed Eclipse with the latest Android SDK on our system. We are going to use Android Studio because Eclipse is no longer supported by Google as an IDE for Android development. On step 2 of the documentation, we can see that we'll need to import the code Import Me in Eclipse folder in Android Studio. Let me open the Android Studio IDE and see how we can import the source code. In order to import a project that was not developed with Android Studio, as is the case with our project which was developed by using Eclipse IDE, we will need to use the Import Project feature. You can see that this is used to import Android projects developed with Eclipse, Gradle, or other tools. Next we are asked for the location of our project. In my case I will navigate to my home folder, then to Documents, after that to Classic Highway Car Avoidance Game, and inside this we can find the code Import Me in Eclipse folder. From this folder, we will only need to select the actual folder that contains the game, which in our case is highway speed. We press OK and we are then asked about the destination folder for our project, or where do we want to save it. I will keep the default settings here and will press next. We are then asked if we want Android Studio to replace our jar or library files with dependencies when possible. I will again keep the default settings here and will press finish. After a few moments, the import process has completed and we can see the results. Usually, Android Studio does a pretty good job of importing projects that were developed with other tools like Eclipse in this case. However, we receive an error that states failed to find the target Android 15. There are a couple of ways to address this issue. We can either click the link and install the Android SDK version 15, which is an outdated one, or we can update the configuration files and set the project to use the most recent version of Android's SDK, the one that we installed during the Android Studio setup. We will pick the second option because using the latest version of the SDK is always recommended. So let me minimize this window for now. Then we can see an import summary text file, which describes how the import procedure went. In our case, we don't need to take a look at this because we already know how it went. So let me open the project panel and make sure that Android View is selected. We open the highway speed application and navigate to the app folder. Here we can find a file called build.gradle, file that has been generated during the import process. Let's open this file and make the necessary changes. First, on line 4, we can see the compiled SDK version, which has the current value of 15. We will need to change this to reflect the Android SDK value that we installed during the Android SDK setup process, and this was 22. And we need to make the same modification for the target SDK version, so we will change this also to 22. Now, there is another configuration file called Android Manifest, and this one is located inside the Manifests folder. Let's open it, and from lines 7 to 9, we can see a uses SDK element. The values that are present here are overwritten by the ones located in the build.gradle, the file that we just modified. These settings are making any sense only when running Eclipse IDE, so we can remove these lines from here as we are using Android Studio. So let me select these lines and simply delete them. Finally, let's save the file and try to run the application. We can do that by pressing the green button, which looks like a play sign. And we got an error. This time the error says that the min SDK version, 8 in our case, is smaller than the version that our Google Play Services is using, which is 9. The Google Play Services is the library included in our project, which allows us to display ads in our game. Looks like the latest version of this library requires at least Android SDK version 9 in order to run. So back to our build.gradle file, we will need to change the min SDK version from 8 to 9. Let's synchronize Gradle and give another try to our project. And this time it looks like the builder process takes longer than before, which is a good sign as most errors are usually spotted immediately. And after a few moments, we can see a window titled Choose Device. This window allows us to select a device that will be used to run our application. In other words, it means that our application compiled successfully and we should pick a device that will run the app. This can be either a real device like a phone or tablet connected to the computer, or a virtual device, also known as emulator. As no devices are currently running, we will need to start a new virtual device or emulator. We can choose one from the list of available emulators, which right now contains only one device, the Nexus 5. In case we want to use this device for future launches of the application, we can check this option and we will not be asked the next time which device we want to use. But that's all for now. In the next lesson, we will see how to run our application in a virtual device or emulator. So in this video, we downloaded the source code for the application from kouncool. We extracted the content and we used the import feature of Android Studio to import the project. Even though the project was developed by using Eclipse IDE, which is another Android development tool that is no longer supported by Google, we were able to import it in Android Studio, and with minor modifications, we were able to compile the application, meaning that we are ready to run it. Thanks for watching.